There are 5 words that keep more people in corporate than any salary ever has. What would I even do? Not the money, not the health insurance. Those are important, but those often come later. This question gets you first. And today I want to take that apart. It's a question that shows up at 11 p.m. with the job listings open in one tab and your own resume in another. And so I want to sit with that question today because I think most of you have been given exactly one answer to it. And I think that answer is quietly keeping a lot of you stuck. Welcome back to another episode of Choose Courage Inc., where we help creatives, entrepreneurs, and aspiring corporate escape artists break free from the systems that were never built for them and create businesses where people, creativity, and courage come first. I'm Vivianne Castillo, founder of Choose Courage Inc. And if you've been riding with us for a while, you noticed that we went quiet for the last month. And that was a real break, a full one, because rest is a part of how we run this business. It's a part of how I designed this business to run. And I wanted to come back to this mic with something to say instead of something to fill. This is the first episode of season 4, y'all. And the lineup this season is incredible. We have entrepreneurs who left corporate and built something for themselves on their own terms, folks who are challenging the status quo of how business can be done, and more. And their paths are going to echo everything I'm about to argue today. So if this is your lane, hit follow so the season comes straight to you. All right, back to that 11 p.m. question. The answer you've been given, the one that's everywhere right now, probably goes something like this. Before you leave, get specific. Pick your niche. Pick the narrow thing you'll be known for, commit to it hard, and don't even think about walking out the door until you can finish the sentence, I help X do Y. Clarity first, then motion. That's the script. You've heard it from strategists, probably from career coaches, from every business account in your feed. It's ambient at this point. It's the water, right? And I want to push back on it. And I get to push on it because I built my working life across 3 different careers now: counseling, then UX and design, then entrepreneurship. And I can tell you honestly that I did not know the niche before any of them, not one. The clarity showed up after I started moving every single time. And so today I want to walk you through how direction actually gets built when you're leaving corporate, what my 3 pivots taught me about it, and what you can do this week without announcing anything to anyone to start answering what would I even do for real, for real. All right. So let me be fair to the advice for a second because it's not dumb. If you already know what you do, narrowing it is genuinely useful. Specific offers sell better than vague ones. Specific positioning makes marketing easier. None of that is wrong. And later in this episode, I'm going to tell you that you will end up specific eventually. The problem, though, isn't specificity. The problem is the sequence. Pick your niche first is advice written for people who already have the answer and just need permission to commit to it. For everyone else, and that's a lot of folks, it takes a career question and turns it into an entry exam, meaning you can't start until you know. And you can't know because you've spent 10 or 15 years inside one company's version of your skills. So, of course, you can't see what you'd be on the open market. The advice hands you a blank page and calls it a strategy. And so here's where my first career comes in because my counseling training is doing a lot of work in how I read this. Okay. When someone freezes on what would I even do, the standard read is that they have a creativity problem or a self knowledge problem. So go journal about your passions, take the strengths assessment. But that's almost never what I'm seeing when I coach people through this. What I'm seeing is a nervous system doing its job. You're being asked to name out loud a future identity with no data, while your paycheck, your family stability, and your professional reputation all feel like they're writing, I'm getting it right on the first try. And so then your body registers that as a threat. And a nervous system under threat doesn't brainstorm, it shuts the tab and goes back to the job it knows how to survive. So, the blankness you feel when you try to answer that question is not evidence that you have no direction. Hear me. It's evidence that you've been asked to produce certainty in conditions where certainty isn't available yet. And those are different problems and they have different solutions. Because you can't journal your way to data you don't have. You can only go get data, which means the honest answer to what would I even do isn't a niche statement, it's a process. And I want to show you what that process looked like in my own life 3 times, y'all, before I ever could have called it a process. So, my first career wasn't design, it wasn't business. It was counseling and human services. I was a trauma and addiction therapist, and my weeks were spent sitting with people in some of the hardest seasons a life can hold, including inside an inpatient rehab center. And what I loved about that work, what I still carry from it every day, was getting to witness that healing isn't a scarcity. And I had a front row seat to moments of progress and hope that the person living them had genuinely believed weren't possible. And you don't forget what that looks like on someone's face. That work built the lens that I see everything through, including entrepreneurship. And so here's the part that matters for today. I didn't leave counseling because a spreadsheet told me UX research was the optimal adjacent career for my skill profile. I couldn't have named UX as my direction when the restlessness started because I barely knew the field existed the way I'd come to know it. Now, here's how it actually happened. While I was working in an inpatient rehab center, I had a mentor encourage me to find a creative hobby with a beginning and an end because the work never stops. Trauma doesn't resolve on a schedule, addiction doesn't take weekends off, and they could see I needed something in my life that could actually be finished, something I could complete, hold in my hands and set down so that the unfinishable work didn't become the whole of me. And at the time, my stepdad was an engineer, and then I was living in Philly. He was in Chicago. And I thought it'd be cool for us to have this long distance thing to bond over. So I started looking up how to code. And through that rabbit hole, I stumbled onto programs in UX and design, kept pulling the thread and found UX research, and I fell in love. Here was this career that could live at the intersection of my love for people and my interest in business. And I hadn't even been looking for a career. Sit with that for a second. I found my second career while looking for a hobby to bond with my stepdad, and the rest is history. And that's the pattern I want you to catch. The direction didn't arrive while I was journaling about my purpose. It arrived while I was in motion towards something else entirely. So I did a thing, the thing gave me data, and the data pointed me somewhere, and I followed it one step. That's it. That's the whole sophisticated career strategy that got me from counseling into design. Contact, data, one step. And then it happened again. I was working in UX inside organizations, and eventually I founded Humanity Centered, a consultancy focused on UX and organizational culture. And I need you to hear this clearly because on paper, humanity centered looks like a beautifully niched business. Human centered practice, culture work, a specific point of view about what our industry does to people. It grew to 7 figures. It won a Fast Company award. From the outside, it reads like someone picked a sharp lane and executed a plan. But that's not how it happened. Humanity Centered's earliest work focused on supporting UX researchers, helping folks in our field become more equitable, more ethical, and more trauma informed in how they did the work. That was the starting point, practitioners. And over time, the business transformed into something I couldn't have predicted from the first version. Organizational culture work with chief people officers and executives, the very people practitioners kept telling me they couldn't get to. And the narrowing didn't come from a strategy retreat. It came from my yeses, including the wrong ones. Early on, I said yes to clients who believed they were ready to do the work, but weren't actually committed to it. I said yes to companies we knew walking in the door would probably never implement our research and findings. And those engagements were the tuition, so to speak, right? They taught me that what we were really selling was never the research or the workshop. It was change. And change only lands with people who hold both the power to move and the commitment to follow through. And so once I understood that, the business followed the lesson straight up the org chart. And so the niche that everyone could see at the end was an output. It was the residue of a few years of real projects, real clients, and real reactions, mine included. Every engagement taught me something about what the market wanted from me, and just as important, what I could give without eroding myself. The specificity was earned. Nobody could have handed it to me in advance, including me. And then the third pivot, the one that confuses people probably the most, I walked away from humanity centered at seven figures, winded it down on purpose. And I want to give you the honest center of it. Working that closely with a traumatized inside corporate, I was spending so much of my time and my heart helping companies keep their employees. And I was good at it. But at some point, I had to look plainly at what my hands were doing all day. I have been trained as a healer, and the healer in me kept looking at the person across the table and thinking about their freedom, while the contract in my inbox was about their retention. And those are not the same job. And I realized I didn't want to spend my one working life helping people how to endure more. I wanted to help people escape, to heal, and to be more free. And that's the want Choose Courage Inc. was born from. And once I name it out loud, staying with the old work, even at seven figures, would have been its own quiet form of self abandonment. Now, I'm not telling you that as a flex, and I'm definitely not telling you to build something successful just to leave it. I'm telling you because it's the strongest evidence I have for today's argument. If direction were something you find once, lock in and defend forever, walking away from a working seven figure niche would be self sabotage, but it wasn't. It was the same move I'd made twice before. The work gave me new data about who I was becoming, and then I followed it. Choose Courage Inc. exists because of that. Three careers, and at the start of each one, if you'd cornered me and demanded my niche statement, I probably would have failed that test because ultimately that test is broken, not the people failing it. So let me say the thesis more plainly and directly. Direction isn't a thing you find by introspecting harder. It's a thing you build by making contact with real work and letting the results tell you something. Motion produces data, and data produces direction in that order. Now, the second I say motion, I can feel some of you tensing up because in this culture, in this day and age, motion gets translated as hustle, hustle, hustle. Quit dramatically, launch loudly, wake up at 5 a.m. and build your escape route as a second unpaid job on top of the one that's already burning you out. And so I want to be really clear that is not what I mean. And if your exploration plan requires you to grind, the plan is wrong. You cannot gather good data about what kind of work gives you life while you're running on fumes. A depleted nervous system reads everything as a threat. Remember that. And exhaustion then can potentially contaminate the experiment. When I'm talking about motion, the way I mean it is small, bounded, and cheap. It's measured in contact, in touches with the real thing. And a touch can be genuinely tiny. One conversation with someone doing work you're curious about, where you ask what their Tuesday actually looks like. One small project for a real person, scope to a weekend, not a season. One workshop you run for five people. One document you write, solving a problem you've solved 100 times at work. Put where someone outside your company can react to it. None of that requires quitting. None of it requires an announcement, a rebrand, or a LinkedIn banner that makes your manager raise an eyebrow. And each touch does something introspection can't. It generates a reaction from the market, sure, but also, and more importantly, from you. Your body keeps score in these experiments, okay? So, some work you finish tired in the good way, the way you feel about moving furniture with a friend that you actually care about. Some work you finish hollowed out. And that difference is data, and it's data you can only collect live. No values worksheet will surface it because worksheets ask what you think you'd enjoy, and we are famously unreliable narrators on that question. Actually, behavioral economists have built entire careers on the gap between what people predict they'll want and what they actually choose when it's real. And so your predictions about your future work self are guesses. Your reactions during actual work are measurements. Build on the measurements. Okay, so practically, you're in the job. The question is, what would I even do? And I've just told you the answer comes from motion. But where do you point the motion first? You start from pull, and pull already exists in your life, whether you've noticed it or not. So I want you to look at what people already come to you for, not your job description, the sideways request, so to speak. The colleague who always grabs you before their big presentation, the friend who won't sign a lease without your read on it, the thing your team routes to you, even though it's technically nobody's job. Those requests are the market speaking directly, and most of us have been taught to treat them as flattering noise instead of a signal. Then I want you to look at the parts of your actual work week that don't cost you anything. Every job has tasks that drain and a few that, weirdly, give energy back. And so that second category is telling you something about the shape of your work you could sustain. Because between those two, the requests coming at you and the tasks that don't deplete you, you have more than enough to design a first experiment. You don't need the perfect direction. All you need is a plausible one. And so then you run the smallest real version of it. And when I say real, real means an actual person receives the work and, when possible, money changes hands, even a small amount. I say that as someone who thinks our culture's obsession with monetizing every hobby is a sickness. So hear the reason. Paid attention is different data than polite attention. Friends will tell you your idea is great, but a stranger paying you $150 will tell you what it's actually worth to them, whether it fell short and whether they'd send someone else. So you're not trying to replace your salary with this experiment. You're buying information, and it's the cheapest good information you'll ever get. And this is exactly the work I built the walkout to hold. So let me name it here really quick. The walkout is my self paced program for corporate professionals, especially those in UX design and tech who are somewhere in what we will call the exit, right? The direction work we're talking about today is in there alongside the money piece, the readiness piece, structured so that you're not doing it alone at 11 p.m. with 40 tabs open. It's fully self paced and it's open whenever you are. The link is waiting for you in the show notes if you're curious. But let me get back to the sequence because there's one more step and it's the one everybody skips, and it's called repetition. One experiment tells you almost nothing. One client who ghosts, one workshop that lands flat, one project that lights you up. Any single result is a moment, not a pattern. And so the narrowing happens across repetitions. You run the small thing, you keep what worked, you dropped what drained you adjust and you run it again. Do that a handful of times and something remarkable happens. The niche assembles itself. The language sharpens because you've now heard real people describe their problem in their own words. The audience narrows because you've noticed who you love working with and who you don't. Spend some time in this rhythm and you'll be able to finish, I help X do Y without flinching. And it'll be true because every word of it will have been earned through contact. And that's the same sentence the standard advice demanded from you on day one. The difference is you'll actually believe yours. And so, one more filter for choosing between experiments. It comes from the framework at the center of everything I teach called the courage over comfort spectrum. Any way of making money sits somewhere between extractive and regenerative. And that includes the ways you make money from yourself. So, when two experiments look equally promising on paper, choose the one that returns energy instead of the one that spends you. So that way, you're not just testing offers here, you're testing whether a working life can be built that doesn't require your slow erosion to fund it. That criteria belongs in the experiment from day one. Now, the fear underneath all of this, the one that makes pick your niche first feel so load bearing, even when it's stalling you. What if I put in the motion, choose a direction, and it turns out to be the wrong one? What if I waste 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? And I want to handle this one carefully because the fear is legitimate and I won't pretend otherwise. If you're the sole provider in your house, if people are counting on your paycheck, the cost of a wrong turn isn't abstract to you. So let me tell you what a wrong direction actually costs in this model and what it doesn't. In the pick first model, choosing wrong is catastrophic because you've bet everything on the choice before gathering any data. You quit, you announce, you build the whole identity, and if it's wrong, you're starting over in public. In the motion model, choosing wrong costs you an experiment, a weekend, a workshop, a small project that taught you not this, which I need you to hear is not a waste. Not this is direction. And every no narrows the map. I spent years in counseling before design, and by the pick first logic, those years were a wrong turn I should regret. Except my counseling training is showing up even in this episode. It's in how I read that frozen feeling y'all get at 11 p.m. It's how I coach my clients through their fear and trauma around money. It's in the trauma informed spine of everything Choose Courage Inc. does and everything Humanity Center did. And so the design years work the same way. I build offers and programs like someone who spent a decade studying how humans actually move through experiences because I did. Nothing transferred to zero. The careers stack. And so there's a pattern from behavioral economics worth naming here, the sunk cost pull. And you don't need the textbook version because you already know it from the inside. It's the voice that says, you can't change direction now. Look at everything you've already put in, the tenure, the title, the pension math, whatever that is, that voice will show up when you consider leaving corporate. And if you do the motion work, it'll show up again the first time an experiment tells you to adjust course. Expect it though, expect it both times. It's not information about your future, it's grief about your past dressed up as strategy. And you're allowed to feel the grief without obeying the strategy. And if you want proof that changing direction isn't ruin, I'll offer mine one more time. I walked away from a 7-figure company that I built, that had my name all over it, that was working. And so, by sunk cost logic, that decision was crazy. From inside my actual life, it was the most direct route to the work I'm doing right now, which fits me better than anything that came before it. I love and am enjoying my life right now. I'm loving it and enjoying it so much. I love my life in Mexico. I love the pace and the culture and what living here has done for my capacity for creativity and joy. I love how my mornings belong to me, and they're often filled with Spanish lessons, breakfast or coffee with my partner or friends, reading, working out, whatever hobby is feeding my creativity that month. And then I slip into my 5-hour workday. And so every so called wrong turn I just described helped build that life. Direction you can outgrow was still good direction. And it can carry you to the place where you can see further and where you actually want to go. And so I want to land this in your actual week because you're probably listening to this on a commute or in between meetings or whatever it is. And the gap between an episode and a Tuesday is where most of this stuff dies. So everything I'm about to say is quiet. None of it signals anything to your employer. No announcements, no personal brand launch, no bio changes. Direction work at this stage is private research and it's supposed to be. So, sometime this week, I want you to open a note on your phone, take out a journal, and I want you to write down the last several times someone asked for your help outside your formal job duties. And I want you just to list them. Don't analyze them yet. And then over the next month, have one conversation, just one. And I want you to find a person doing work that's even vaguely in the territory of your list and ask them what their actual week looks like and what they'd never give up and what they'd warn you about. So you're not networking here. Hear me. Listen, escuchame. You're not networking here. You're collecting field data. And if something in that conversation tugs at you, scope the smallest real version of an experiment. Something one real person could receive that fits inside a weekend without touching your sleep, your family time, or your recovery. And if it can't fit inside those boundaries, shrink the experiment, but don't shrink the boundaries. And then I want you to notice what this costs because it should be almost nothing. And I want to say this directly to those of you carrying the whole household on your income, because I know the money question sits underneath the direction question for you. And we handle the money math in its own episodes that are coming later on in this season with the seriousness it deserves. But this part, the direction part, is the piece of leaving corporate you can start with zero financial risk. The paycheck keeps arriving while you gather data. And that's not cheating or hedging, that's design. And that's done by design. And the most protective version of an exit is the one where direction gets built before the paycheck stops. And it's done quietly, it's done in small touches, and it's done over months. Comfort, however, comfort keeps telling you the safe move is to wait until you're certain. But courage in this season just means one conversation and one small experiment while your life stays fully intact. So the next time you're up at 11 p.m. with the tabs open and that question shows up, what would I even do? I want you to catch what that question is really asking because it's not demanding an answer tonight. If anything, it's inviting you into a process, and the process is contact, data, one step. Again, that process is contact, data, one step. My entire working life, counseling to design to this mic, was built exactly that way, one unglamorous touch at a time. And at no point did I know the destination. I only ever knew the next experiment. And so the people telling you to pick the niche before you move aren't lying to you, but they are describing the view from the finish line and calling it the starting instructions. And you don't have to take my word for it because this whole season is built to show you just that. The entrepreneurs you're going to be hearing from in this podcast have built real things, have made hard decisions. And as you listen to their stories, I hope you pay attention to how many of them knew their niche on day one. The pattern I walked you through today is going to show up again and again and again in lives that look nothing like mine or yours. And so I want you to close the job listings, open the note or take out a journal, write down the last three things someone asked for your help with, and let that be enough for today. And just a friendly reminder that nobody who built a life they love knew the whole plan on day one. And that you don't need the whole answer to take the next step. You just need the next step. And of course, drink some water. Thanks for hanging out with us and diving into some of these real and unfiltered conversations. We know your time is valuable, and so we don't take it for granted. If today's episode made you think, if it challenged you, or gave you something new to consider, we'd love for you to hit that follow button on whatever streaming service you're using. That way, you'll never miss an episode when we drop them. And if you want to go even deeper, sign up for our newsletter at choosecourageinc.com, and you'll get updates on new episodes, access to exclusive freebies, and first dibs on coaching opportunities and other resources to help you make bold moves in your life and business. So we appreciate you, we see you, and we're rooting for you. Until next time, keep choosing courage over comfort, and a friendly reminder to drink some water.